So I stumbled onto Hassan Campbell's video about Quando Rondo, about him dropping his flag and gets backlash, and here's his response. So I got to check out the first 8 minutes. If you want, I'll leave the link. You can go check it out yourself. I'm a frequent watcher of Hassan Campbell. I disagree. Like I gotta say this with everybody, right? I disagree with a lot of stuff he says, but I think I agree. Matter of fact, I know I agree with more of what he says than anything else, and mainly because he takes a perspective and he makes a choice to focus on trying to rebuild the community. He uses colorful language. He says things, you know what I'm saying, that elicit a response, and I understand that I'm doing everything in my power to kind of not do that, to differentiate my brand from that, and just logically and kind of take in, absorb, and then be able to digest and then kind of regurgitate in a new form. So I listen to a lot of what he says because I truly believe what he says, and he means what he says. You know, um, so right now he's touching base on Quando Rondo, right? About how he's dropped his flag. If you haven't heard, Quando Rondo's a rapper. I don't really get to listen to a lot of his stuff. Maybe I'll do that in another video. Actually, do some critique of his music. But I do know he suffered trauma. So a friend of his was recently murdered, and he saw that firsthand. Anybody who's experienced anything like that, unfortunately, I have. It's very traumatic, and you remember, you know what I mean? It affects you in a lot of different ways. Maybe you don't smile as much. Maybe you're a little more suspicious of your environment, people you're around because of it. But he's going through a trauma. And if it's a fact that he is putting down his flag, I commend him to some degree. Not to say that I commend everyone who does that because I do believe there's some positivity that is possible. But unfortunately, if what you're associated with is 51% negative, then it's pretty much all negative. Even if there's 49% that's not. So unfortunately, gang culture has not been a great culture for us. And we've seen what happened with Nipsey Hussle. We see what happened with a lot of people. Tupac, unfortunately, was murdered from my perspective on those type of waves, you know what I mean, on that type of time. So it's unfortunate. And being that I've worked with young people, specifically between the ages of 17 to 24, young men mostly, my objective and my goal and the time I spent was trying to speak life into them, speaking to them about my experiences, trying to help them to avoid some of the problems that come along with the lifestyle and just not having a father figure. So I was fortunate and blessed enough to have been able to have provided that. So I'm grateful for people like Hassan Campbell because, like I said, even though I disagree with some of the stuff he says, I know where he's coming from. And I respect the fact anyone, even if I completely dislike you, if you are honest with what you're saying, I respect you. And if I can respect you, I can have a conversation with you. Even if I'm, offended or affected to some degree. I may need a little time to absorb it, but I do respect the honesty and I'll resurface with a more, I'm grateful. I feel like I've gotten to the point where I'm not as affected. It doesn't affect me as negatively, right? Because I appreciate what people say and I kind of do what Ludacris says. Move, get out the way. When somebody says something, try not to take it personal. But let's get into this video real quick and I'm going to respond. All right?
And the candles in front of the building burning. Little Quando Rondo, it's your actions. But let's also keep in mind this master manipulators that's behind this too. In those streets of LA, out there it's evil.
Out there it's evil. I mean, I've been to Cali, all right, and I had an experience almost immediately off the plane, which backs up a little bit of what he's saying. I had a confrontation simply because it's just, Nipsey Hussle gave an example about, when you're about to ride on somebody, you're about to put in work, you go to the other side of town and you're looking for this person, and then you see the dude in the suit, you ignore him, you see the person who's dressed like this, but then when you see somebody who looks like you and dressed like you say, oh yeah, get him. And I felt that when I arrived there. I felt that energy toward me. You know what I mean? And I'm not cut from a cloth that's not seasoned in terms of how to respond and react and actually interact with certain situations. So unfortunately, I had to engage in that energy just for survival purposes. And it's unfortunate because that's where we find ourselves. Nipsey also talked about the crabs in the bucket effect. He wasn't the first, but it is a real thing. And it's unfortunate that we still have to deal with that amongst our own kind.
That gang coach out there is evil. It's evil. So I take my hat off to Quando Rondo for dropping his flag. I hope he stick to that decision. Me dropping my flag was the best decision I ever made. And all that talking about he got to get DP'd, man. I pray that God send warriors and angels to protect that young boy.
Another thing I admire about Hassan Campbell, he doesn't come from a perfect background. You know what I'm saying? He has existed and participated in a certain environment that's unsavory. You know what I'm saying? That's not exactly what I would want my kids, nieces, nephews, or people in general, especially children, to be involved in. And he's been able to have experienced that, go through the system, transition, and rise beyond a lot of it. And I think it's really powerful to have a strong man, okay? Um, and he's imperfect, you know what I'm saying? But when I say strength, I mean a person who takes a position and a stand, and generally from his core, his root, he's actually trying to prevent more of the same. So, he considers himself a tribal leader. I consider him a tribal leader. He considers himself a man. I consider him a man. You know what I'm saying? So I respect his message and I respect what he's saying right now for this young dude, Quando Rondo. You know what I'm saying? I do wish the best for him. And I'm grateful to some degree that he was able to do what you know what I mean, Hassan has done. Drop the flag. I've been in positions where I had to drop, you know what I'm saying? I had to separate from certain things because it's very, very like a vacuum. It's like it'll suck you in. You know what I'm saying? And I'm cut in a certain way where, you know what I'm saying? It's easy to shot call. It's easy to put things in position and make things move. But when you try to actually get in position and help people to move out the way, then you see the people who are actually benefiting from that rock that you just tripped over being there. And I'm the kind of person, I see that rock, I'm like, let me move it. So you realize you move this shit and there's bugs under it and the people with microscopes staring from far away, waiting for people to fall so they can come and benefit from it. So shout out to Hassan for actually taking a position on fatherhood. I respect that.
I pray that that young boy apologize for what he did or the damage that he caused. Because the reality of it is, King Vaughn made up his mind. He made his decision. Instead of enjoying the riches that he was on his way to, he decided to go down a path of darkness called Lil Tim. Found himself in the hospital where the staff in that hospital wasn't his friend. He looked fine when he was on the way to the hospital. Next thing you know, you seeing pictures of him on the internet with his body zipped up. Zip him up. They zipped him up. When they unzipped him, I'm just wondering what they took out. Huh? My prayers go out to Quando Rondo. He a young man making grown man decisions, and it's causing his friends to be casualties of.
A lot of young men in my background, from my experience, from what I was fortunate enough to do in terms of volunteering, is actually acquiring employment in this field of human development, human services. I've seen it and it's broken my heart. They call it secondary trauma. When you can actually have the empathy to sit with a person and care about them, you start to feel their pain. You know what I mean? And I felt a lot of that. And I've seen it and I did my best to avoid some of it, but I've also seen, like I mentioned earlier, how people benefit from it. It's unfortunate, you know what I'm saying, that people really do benefit from that. And I'm not here to knock nobody's hustle, but at the same token, it's unfortunate, you know what I mean, that a lot of what happens in our community is orchestrated, is created.
Of his war. What war? What are they fighting for? Right. What are they fighting for? See, that's the question. What are they fighting for? And he got to check in to who? To protect him from who? Right. So he's supposed to check in with the set to protect him from the set. Y'all still don't get it though, right? Y'all set, you gangbangers, are becoming worse than the people that put you in the bottom of the ship, the colonizer.